Previously on Midnight Confessions with Ava. I took a late-night call from a stranger who called himself Midnight, and he knew far too much about me for someone I had never met. He had seen me on the Jubilee line in my red scarf. He had listened from Studio 3 2 doors down, and he had slipped into my life through the phone lines until I could not stop thinking about his voice. On night 2, he shared a lift with me without saying who he was, then called live to confirm it was him and left a secret message that proved he was inside my building. On night 3, I walked into Studio 3 because he asked me to, stood so close to him I could smell his bitter, manly perfume and feel his heat, and then watched my phone light up with one brutal notification from Uber saying, "Your trip has been cancelled." This is night 4, and this is what happened after I walked out of that room. For a second, I just stare at the screen, at the words, "Your trip has been cancelled," while Midnight is standing less than an arm's length away from me in Studio 3. His scent is everywhere. That sharp, expensive cologne, bitter and warm, mixed with the faint smell of cables and dust and the aircon hum. "Looks like your ride gave up on you," he says softly, and I can hear the smile in his voice before I even look up. I make myself meet his eyes, steady and amused, dark enough that I cannot quite read them. "That is because someone kept me here," I reply, trying to sound more annoyed than I actually am. He lifts his hands a little, palms out, like he is surrendering. "You can still go," he says quietly. "I am not locking the door." The funny thing is, it makes me want to stay more, knowing I am not trapped, that this is entirely my choice. My body is buzzing, cheeks hot, lips dry, and his cologne is soaked into the front of my jumper where I leaned too close to him a minute ago. "I am going," I say, even though my feet are not moving yet. I am not being the girl who loses a 5-star rating because she hid in Studio 3. He laughs under his breath, and the sound catches somewhere low in my stomach. "Then go," he murmurs, "before I give you another reason to stay." That line is dangerous, too dangerous, and I cling to the one bit of sense left in my head. I step sideways past him, my shoulder brushing his arm for the briefest second, and the contact sends a tiny shock through me, like touching a live wire. I open the door, the corridor light hits my face, and I can feel his eyes on me as I pause in the doorway, heart thudding. "Good night, Midnight," I say without turning. "Good night, Ava," he answers, voice smooth and maddeningly calm. "Get home safe." I pull the door shut behind me, and the click echoes down the empty corridor. The air outside the building is cold enough to slap the heat out of my cheeks, but it does not quite manage it. I wrap my red scarf tighter around my neck, my fingers trembling slightly, and open the Uber app more out of habit than hope. The cancelled trip sits there like a small accusation, my driver long gone back into the night. I sigh, close it, and flip to the transport app like a normal Londoner with no luck and too many emotions, checking the timetable for the night bus. 13 minutes, I mutter, seeing the next bus on the tiny map crawling along the route like it has all the time in the world. I shove my phone into my pocket and start walking to the bus stop, boots clicking on the pavement, breath fogging in front of me. Every step away from the station feels wrong and right at the same time, like I am leaving something unfinished behind me, and also narrowly avoiding something I am not ready for. The smell of his cologne clings to my scarf, mixing with the ghost of roses from my hair, and it is doing terrible things to my ability to think. The bus stop is lit by a single harsh street lamp, empty except for me and a discarded takeaway carton someone did not bother to bin. I lean against the glass, phone in my hand again, watching the little bus icon inch closer at a speed that feels like a personal insult. Headlights sweep around the corner behind me, bright in the wet road, and I do not pay attention at first because I am used to cars passing this late. Then the engine slows instead of roaring by, and a dark car pulls up right in front of the bus stop, indicator ticking softly. The passenger window glides down, and that same bitter, manly scent rolls out of the warm air inside, wrapping around me like a hand. "You are going to freeze out here," his voice says from the driver's seat, calm, amused, like this is nothing. I turn my head slowly, and there he is. Midnight. But not framed by studio light this time. Jacket off now, suit jacket folded neatly on the back seat, white shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms, veins visible, tie loosened and hanging open around his neck. The interior of the car glows soft and low, dashboard lights painting his face in muted blue and red, his cologne threading through the warmer scents of leather and something sweet, maybe the smell of old coffee in the cup holder. "Stalking me is a bold choice," I say, trying to keep my voice level. "I work here," he replies lightly, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear stick, long fingers relaxed. "You cancelled your ride? You walked past my building. I put two and two together." "You cancelled my ride," I correct him, folding my arms, though the wind immediately punishes me for not putting them back in my pockets. He gives me that little, almost smile again. "Semantics," he says softly. "Get in. I will take you home." I glance at the bus timetable on my phone, then at the car, then at him, weighing up the sensible option against the one that smells like trouble and expensive aftershave. The bus is still 10 minutes away. "You could be a serial killer," I point out. "You gave me your number and walked into my studio," he counters, eyebrow lifting. "If I was going to murder you, I have missed several prime opportunities." I huff a laugh, despite myself, the cold biting at my ankles through my jeans. "Fine," I sigh, opening the door. "But if this ends badly, I am haunting Studio 3. The warmth hits me as soon as I slide into the passenger seat, the doors closing out the wind and the city noise, leaving just us and the low hum of the engine. Up close like this, without studio glass between us, he feels even more solid, more real. "Seatbelt," he reminds me in that infuriatingly calm voice, and the simple domesticity of it sends a little flutter through my chest. I kip it across myself, fingers brushing the edge of his coat still folded on the back seat, feeling the soft wool under my hand. "Address," he says, pulling away from the curb, and I rattle it off automatically, realizing, as I do, that I am giving him yet another piece of my life without really thinking. The city slides past outside, street lights and shuttered shops, but inside the car it feels slow, suspended, like the world has pulled back a bit to let this happen. "You drive like someone who has done this route a lot," I say after a moment, watching his hands on the wheel. "Night shifts," he replies, eyes on the road. There are only so many ways to escape this part of London at 3 a.m. The radio is on low, some late-night show murmuring about weather and football in the background, but his voice is all I actually hear. "So what is the verdict?" he asks after a beat, "now that you have seen me upright, outside a lift, in real lighting?" I pretend to think very hard, turning my head a little so I can take him in properly. White shirt slightly creased, button undone at his throat, sleeves rolled just enough to show strong forearms, dark trousers sitting right on his hips, jaw shadowed, hair pushed back by his fingers at some point and left that way. "You are taller than you sounded," I say finally, "and more annoyingly put together." He laughs quietly, glancing at me before focusing back on the road. "I will take that," he says. "You are exactly what I imagined, by the way." "That is worrying," I mutter, cheeks warming. "What did you imagine?" "Someone who looks like she says yes to everyone else's chaos and no to her own," he answers, tone gentle rather than cruel. I was right. The truth in that stings and soothes at the same time. "You were very close to not letting me leave that studio," I say quietly, watching the lights flick across his face. "I was very close to asking you not to," he admits, fingers tightening briefly on the wheel before relaxing. "But I'm not interested in you staying because you feel cornered by a cancelled Uber." The honesty of that sinks into me like warmth. "So what are you interested in?" I ask softly. He takes a breath, that subtle inhale that I am starting to recognize as him choosing his words. I am interested in you walking into a room because you want to, not because it is the least bad option, he says. And I am interested in seeing what you are like in the middle of the day, when you are not hiding behind a mic or a scarf. My heart does that unhelpful, fluttering thing again. That sounds suspiciously like a date, I reply, attempting lightness to cover how that sentence makes my stomach drop and lift at once. Maybe it is, he says easily, turning the wheel, indicator ticking. Tomorrow, there is a small cafe not far from here. Quiet, terrible playlists, good coffee, around 2 in the afternoon. Not very romantic branding, I point out. I will text you the name, he goes on, ignoring that. If you want to see what I look like in daylight, I will be at a corner table, working, pretending not to hope you turn up. I huff out a breath, half a laugh, half a protest. You assume I have nothing better to do, I say, though we both know my big plan tomorrow is sleep, notes, and overthinking. I assume you will do whatever you want, he replies. I am just telling you where I will be if what you want happens to match what I want. The car slows as we turn into my street, rows of sleeping houses passing the windows. And if I do not come, I ask quietly, then I will drink too much coffee and pretend it was a normal afternoon, he says, a small smile tugging at his mouth. And I will still call your show tomorrow night, because I am inconvenient like that. He pulls up outside my building and shifts the car into neutral, engine humming softly. For a second we just sit there, the world muted, the road empty. His cologne curling around me like something I could lean into. Thank you for the lift, I say, unclipping my seatbelt, fingers fumbling a little with the metal. Get inside before you freeze, he replies, nodding towards my front door, then adds, sleep, if you can. I open the door, the cold night rushing in again, and step out, clutching my bag. Send me the name of the place, I say over the roof of the car, trying not to sound like I have already decided. Already on your phone, he answers, tapping his screen once, and my pocket vibrates in agreement. I give him a small wave, then turn and head for my door, feeling his eyes on my back until I disappear inside. My phone buzzes again later, when I am under the covers in a room that still smells faintly of roses. The text is simple, the name of the cafe and a time, 2 p.m, with a small coffee cup emoji that makes me roll my eyes at how casual he is pretending to be. I type, no promises, then delete it, then put the phone face down on the pillow and try not to think about how I already know what I am wearing. Morning is a blur of half sleep and quick showers, and by early afternoon I am standing in front of my wardrobe, towel wrapped around me, staring at clothes like they are exam questions. I do not want to look like I tried too hard, but also I absolutely refuse to turn up in my trackies. In the end, I pull on my favourite high-waisted jeans, the black ones that fit properly, a soft cream jumper that falls off one shoulder if I am careless, and my black ankle boots. I leave my hair down, still slightly damp, and loop a lighter scarf around my neck this time, pale grey instead of red, as if changing the colour can trick fate into thinking this is nothing. A little bit of mascara, a touch of gloss, just enough to look awake, and I tell myself off in the mirror for caring this much. The cafe he picked is small and tucked down a side street. A big front window fogged with steam and the smell of coffee drifting out every time someone opens the door. Inside it is all mismatched wooden chairs, small round tables, fairy lights along the ceiling, and a blackboard menu written in messy chalk. It is cosy in that slightly cluttered way. Low conversations humming, cups clinking, cutlery tapping plates, the soft hiss of the espresso machine like background music. I spot him almost immediately, in the corner near the window, one elbow on the table, a mug in front of him, a notebook open, pen in his hand. He has traded the suit for something more casual, dark jeans that sit comfortably on his hips, a plain black t-shirt that fits well across his shoulders, and a grey wool coat draped over the back of his chair. His hair is slightly messier than last night, like he towel dried it and left it alone, and there is a hint of stubble along his jaw that makes him look more relaxed and somehow more dangerous at the same time. The bitter, manly perfume is still there, but softer now, mixed with the smell of coffee and sugar and warm air, less sharp, more like something that just belongs on him. For a second, I consider turning around and walking straight back out. Then he looks up, as if he felt me arrive, eyes landing on me with no surprise at all, and the corner of his mouth lifts in that slow, annoyingly charming smile. "You came," he says as I reach the table, and I hate how pleased that makes me feel. "I was in the area," I reply, pulling my scarf off and draping it over the back of the chair as I sit, "and I heard they do terrible playlists." As if on cue, some soft acoustic cover of an old 90s song starts playing, too earnest for its own good. He glances at the speaker and nods. "See," he says, "I would not lie to you." Up close in daylight, there is nowhere for either of us to hide. I can see faint lines by his eyes when he smiles, a tiny scar at his eyebrow, the way his fingers tap the side of his mug when he is thinking, and he can see every bit of my face that the studio lights usually blur. "What are you drinking?" I ask, nodding at his mug. "Flat white," he says, then looks at me. "You?" "Latte," I answer. "I am basic. It is fine." He chuckles, stands and heads to the counter before I can protest, leaving me to watch the way his shoulders move under the black t-shirt, the easy way he navigates the small space. When he comes back, he sets my latte down in front of me, foam heart slightly lopsided, and sits opposite, his knees brushing mine under the small round table. The contact is light, but it sends a little spark up my leg. "So," he says, wrapping both hands around his mug, "how is it feeling, seeing me in daylight?" "Less illegal," I say, blowing gently on my drink. "More confusing." "Confusing how?" he asks, genuinely curious. "You're meant to live in the dark," I reply, "in corridors and studios and late-night phone lines. You look too normal sitting in a cafe like this." He tilts his head, studying me. "You look exactly like you sound," he says. "Smart, sexy, tired, trying not to show any too much." I roll my eyes, but the compliment still lands somewhere soft. The conversation drifts, surprisingly easy, from music to how much we both hate certain adverts, to the strange comfort of regular strangers on public transport. He tells me he works freelance sound and editing, moving between stations and studios, that late nights suit him because he never really learned how to sleep properly. He does not give me his full life story, but little bits slip out, enough for me to feel like there is a real person here, not just a disembodied voice that happens to know my schedule. I tell him small things too. How I ended up presenting the show, almost by accident. How I am technically meant to be focusing on studies. How the studio feels more like home some nights than my flat. We make fun of each other a little. I tease him about the way he talks like he is constantly narrating a documentary. He teases me about how I cannot sit still, foot bouncing under the table when I get excited. At one point he reaches across and brushes a crumb from the corner of my mouth with his thumb, so casually that it takes me a second to process it. My breath catches, and he seems to feel it, his hand lingering half a heartbeat too long before he pulls it back, fingers curling around his mug again. "You are very forward for a man who hid behind an alias for weeks," I say, hoping my voice sounds steadier than I feel. "You are very calm for a woman who walked into my studio at 3 a.m, he replies, eyes glittering. Time slips while we sit there, mugs refilled once, plates cleared, the light outside shifting from bright to softer as the afternoon tilts towards evening. Eventually I glance at my phone and see the reminder for tonight's show flashing at me like an impatient parent. "I must go," I say reluctantly. "London needs me to supervise its bad decisions again." "Of course," he nods, standing as I do, pulling on his grey coat, the fabric settling neatly over his shoulders. The bitter, manly perfume rises with his movement, stronger now, mingling with the scent of coffee and sugar that has soaked into my jumper. "That is a bold promise," I say, but I follow him out anyway. the cool air shocking my cheeks after the cozy cafe warmth. The car feels familiar now, like a strange extension of the studio, private and small and full of things we are still not saying. On the way to the station, we talk about nothing and everything. Traffic and listeners and silly texts people send at stupid hours. His left hand rests lightly on the wheel, right elbow tipped against the door, and every time he shifts gears, his cologne seems to bloom again, making my head feel pleasantly light. When we arrive outside the building, he does not turn the engine off straight away, just leaves it idling, the lights on the dashboard throwing soft colour over both of us. "Before you run back to your red light," he says quietly, "I have something for you." He leans into the back seat, and when he straightens up, there is a small bouquet in his hand, not huge like the first one, but carefully put together, white freesias and a few pale pink roses, wrapped in simple brown paper. The scent is lighter than the first bouquet, fresher, a little citrus, a little sweet, like something you could carry easily instead of drowning in it. "The others will fade," he says, holding them out to me. "I wanted you to have something new to walk into tonight." "You really are determined to ruin the market for every other man," I say softly. "Occupational hazard," he replies, eyes steady on mine. I glance at the flowers, at the building, at him, and I feel something inside me click into place. A decision that has been hovering for days. Tomorrow, I say slowly, choosing each word, after the show ends, when the red light goes off and everyone else goes home. He watches me, completely still, waiting. "Come to my studio," I finish, heart pounding. Not Studio 3, not the corridor, mine. The silence that follows feels thick, charged. The engine humming under it, his cologne wrapping around us, the freesias bright in my lap.